tgmods.com. TGMods is one of the best store in what most would call a gamer's paradise. They have a great variety of cheats for games like Red Dead Redemption 2, 5M, GTA 5, Cs2, Rainbow Six Siege, recoveries, game accounts, Spotify accounts, and much more. All backed up with various payment methods to select from with an instant delivery service at the most cheapest prices out there. You can also join the Discord server with the links in the description for support, giveaways, and much more. Links to TGMods website and Discord server will be in the description, guys. Enjoy the video. What's up, guys? So today we're gonna be doing a configuration guide for Pellix, which is an external cheat for CS2. We will be heading right into configuring the cheat to work without giving you performance issues first, and then moving on to the aimbot and visual section, and then finally moving on to showcasing how to use its features like cloud radar and grenade helper, with then moving on to some prime matchmaking with the configuration that we have made. So let's get right into it, guys. Starting with the first section of the cheat being the general cheat options, here we see options like bypass captures and other performance related options. Starting with the bypass capture, which hides the cheat upon toggle, which is preference based. Moving on, we have use fast memory read, which I don't recommend turning it on as it most probably will crash your system. Onto debug console, I recommend leaving it off. Onto the performance values of this cheat, which you can set it to 0 if you have a top-end system. However, for most people, doing this will get you a very bad performance both in-game and the cheat. Wrong values will eat your FPS in-game, so I recommend following my guidance on this. Local frequency, I recommend setting a value of 5. Players frequency, if your system can handle, I recommend setting it to 0 if not a value of 5. Entities frequency, I recommend a value of anywhere between 50 and 250 max. Trace frequency, I recommend a value of 0 to 5 at max. Process priority, I recommend leaving it at normal. Overlay sync type, I recommend setting it to custom. Overlay render type, I recommend setting it to software unless you have a high-end system. Then you can have it set to hardware, but from my experience, software works the best. Finally, we have overlay frequency, which you can set a value of 0 to 5 at max. Be sure the overlay menu FPS at the top right of your screen somewhat matches your game, otherwise you will notice ESP lags, and at the same time don't unnecessarily have the overlay being at over 1000 FPS as it will bog down your game FPS. Over at the bottom, we have menu color and font type alongside with menu scaling, which are all visual options. Now that we're done with performance tab, let's move on to the visual section. Onto the visual section, we have multiple categories being player, sound, world, and other. These are all pretty self-explanatory, so I'll leave it up to you guys to configure it as you like. Now moving on to the aimbot section of the cheat, and for beginners I advise using the simple mode, for which we will focus on configuring first before configuring the advanced mode. Onto the simple mode, we have the enable toggle, which I recommend setting its type to hold and setting the bind to your weapon fire key being your left mouse click. Below we have the visualize FOV, which I recommend turning it on as it will show your aimbot targeting range. Now moving on to the right side of the menu, as you would notice there are many categories and weapon names, of which you would have to select the following to be able to configure it: pistols, rifles, and snipers. Now that we're done with that, let's configure simple mode for each weapon category. Into the global category, beside the aimbot toggle, clicking onto the setting icon brings up the aimbot checks, for which I recommend turning these following on: wall check, smoke check, flash check, jump check, async visibility tests. Turning these on will make your aimbot visually less blatant, so be sure to turn these options on. Moving on, we have the field of view, which I recommend setting a value of 1.5. Then we have smoothness, which I recommend setting a value of 5. Then we have first shot delay, which I recommend setting a value of 0. Below it, we have recoil control, which I recommend setting its value to 100. Moving on, we have kill delay, which I recommend setting a value of 0. And finally, we have hitboxes, for which I recommend turning on head and upper chest for the global category. Next up being rifles, having the same values from the global category, with the only only changes being made to smoothness value being 8 and hitboxes everything except neck and feet selected. Moving over to the pistols category, it's the same with the only difference being smoothness value of 6 and hitbox all selected with the exception of neck and feet. Finally, we have snipers category in the simple mode, and in this we change the value of field of view being 2, smoothness being 10, and finally hitboxes having everything toggled with the exception of feet. Now that we're done with simple aimbot configuration, let's get into advanced mode aimbot setup, of which I personally utilize advanced. Before we start configuring the advanced mode, do note that there will be two different setups, one being traditional aimbot setup and two will be aim assist setup, of which I recommend using as it is much safer than traditional aimbot. To show you the difference between traditional aimbot, here are two clips. As you can see here, this is a traditional aimbot pulling my aim towards the enemy hitboxes, which in a lot of cases is noticeable. Now in this other instance, here is assist aimbot mode, which as you can see is not immediately noticeable, as instead of pulling my aim towards the enemy, it simply corrects my already moving aim, which as you can see here, it's not letting me immediately move my aim away from the enemy when I have it toggled all the time, which leads to flicks like this looking legit. Now let's get into setting up the traditional aimbot. Here you can see many options, but for legit cheating purposes, we are only going to be focusing on multi-point, field of view, smooth type and its values, RCS, pitch and yaw, and hitboxes. For the each weapon category, make sure your bind is set to hold and your mouse fire key being left click. Moving on, we have smooth type set to dynamic, then we have field of view value set to 1.5. Next up, we have smoothness, pitch and yaw values, minimum being anywhere from 4 and maximum being 15. Then we have the RCS, pitch and yaw being set to 100 of value, and finally hitboxes having everything except neck and feet selected. These are basic settings that can be applied across all weapons, with the only exception to rifles and snipers having a higher smoothness value and more hitboxes selected. Onto the aim assist mode configuration. As you can see here, you turn it on and set its moves to 1, and that's pretty much it. Just make sure your smoothness values don't exceed over 5, as it will be too subtle. Of course, I recommend using assist mode as it's much safer to correct your aim rather than traditional aimbot flicks, as the anti-cheat flags traditional aimbot if it's too blatant on any cheat but does not flag assist mode. Now let's get on to the grenade helper section and show you how it works. So once you guys have downloaded the locations and placed it in the correct location, which a guide is available in Pellix Discord, upon holding utilities you will see icons, and the icons it will show you and tell you associated movement, whether to jump and throw or just throw. So as you stand on the icon, you will need to align your aim at the circle and then start the movement manually, whether that's throwing or jump, run and throw, or jump and throw. It takes a few times to get it right, but once you got it, it's easy to do. Moving on, we have the cloud radar, for which you can give to your friends to use so they can know where your enemies are without any associated risks. And this is how you do it. Click on connect, then select your update rate, but remember a high value will eat more FPS. Then copy the link and give it to them. Ask them to paste it in their Steam overlay browser, and now they have radar, which they can even pin it in game to have a real-time game working radar, which is pretty insane. Now that we're done with all the configuration, let's move on to some prime matchmaking with the same configuration that we just made.
Throwing a grenade. Counter-terrorists win. Go, go, go.
Hello.
Throwing fire.
Why you flash me, you noob?
Grenade. Counter-terrorists win.
ओ भाई
Low HP.
Counter-terrorists win. Throwing a flashbang. I'm throwing a flashbang. Throwing a decoy. Terrorists win.
Seller that you've been looking for. Quality guarantee, customer service on point. He's the one that's got the market in the chokehold, no doubt. So don't get it twisted, don't get it wrong. TG Odds is the one, that's where you belong. The best reseller on the market today. TG Odds the name, that's here to stay.